right, this evening I am talking about Amalek and the Amalekites. Can you all hear me okay? Okay, got some thumbs up there. So we're going to be looking at who are the Amalekites, why was God not happy with the Amalekites, why would King David not happy with the Amalekites, and what can we learn from this? There's a lot of overlap here on what Pastor Dave was talking about a week or so ago, but I just thought we'd have a look at things a little bit more about Amalekites and who they are, where they come from, and what happened to them and where they fit in the Bible. So in Genesis 36, 9 through 17, that's where we see the what I would call the who begats when I was growing up, the genealogies, where we've got Abraham. Abraham had Isaac and Ishmael. Ishmael was the father of the Ishmaelites. Isaac had two sons, Esau, who was the father of the Edomites, and Jacob, who was the father of the Israelites. Jacob later became Israel, and the 12 tribes of Israel. So usually we talk more about the tribes of Jacob, the Israelites. I'm going to look a little bit more at Esau this evening. In Genesis 36, verse 9, and these are the generations of Esau, the father of the Edomites in Mount Seir. These are the names of Esau's son. Eliphaz, the son of Adah, the wife of Esau. That's who we're going to be looking at. And then skipping down to verse 12, and Timnah was concubine to Eliphaz, Esau's son, and she bare to Eliphaz Amalek. And then going down to verse 16, actually go up to verse 15. These were the dukes of the sons of Esau, verse 15. The sons of Eliphaz, the firstborn son of Esau, Duke Taman, Duke Omar, Duke Zepho, Duke Kenaz, Duke Korah, and Duke Gadam, and Duke Elimelech. I've got a couple names in there wrong on my picture, but we see Esau, Eliphaz, and Elimelech. Also, we've got kind of related is we have Lot, who is Abraham's nephew. He had two sons. Actually, they were his grandsons as well as his sons. A little bit of incest there. Moab and Ben-Ammi, father of the Moabites and the Ammonites. So we don't want to get the Ammonites and the Amalekites mixed up. They're two different related peoples, all related through Abraham, but they are different people. So why is God unhappy with the Amalekites? If we go back to Exodus 17, starting in verse 8 of Exodus 17, then came Amalek and fought with Israel in Rephidim. And Moses said unto Joshua, choose us out men and go to fight with Amalek. Tomorrow I will stand on the top of the hill with the rod of God in my hand. So Joshua did as Moses said to him and fought with Amalek. And Moses, Aaron, and Hur went to the top of the hill. And it came to pass when Moses held up his hand that Israel prevailed. And when he let down his hand, Amalek prevailed. But Moses' hands were heavy, and they took a stone and put it under him, and he sat thereon. And Aaron and Hur stayed up his hands, the one on one side and one on the one side, and the other on the other side. And his hands were steady until the going down of the sun. And Joshua discomfited Amalek, and his people with the edge of the sword. And the Lord said unto Moses, write this for a memorial in a book, and rehearse it in the ears of Joshua, for I will utterly put out remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. And Moses built an altar and called the name of it Jehovah Nissi. For he said, because the Lord has sworn that God will have war with Amalek from generation to generation. So the Israelites, they went through the Red Sea, and before they were sent back into the wilderness for 40 years, that's when the Amalekites hit them. They didn't wait long. They heard them coming through the Red Sea and figured that they would take care of them quickly and expediently. But that was not part of the Lord's plan. And the Lord was unhappy with the Amalekites. If we go to Deuteronomy 25, verse 17, remember what Amalek did unto thee by the way when you were come out of Egypt, how he met thee by the way and smote the hindmost of thee, even all that were feeble behind thee, when thou wast faint and weary, and he feared not God. Therefore it shall be, when the Lord thy God hath given thee rest, and all thine enemies round about, in the land which the Lord giveth thee for an inheritance to possess it, thou shalt blot out the remembrance of Amalek from under heaven. Thou shalt not forget it. So then we move on several hundred years, and we get to Saul. And Saul was required to blot out. Saul was the one who was told to take care of the Amalekites. So 1 Samuel 15, Samuel also said unto Saul, the Lord sent me to anoint thee to be king over his people, over Israel. Now therefore hearken unto the voice of the words of the Lord. Thus that saith the Lord of hosts, I remember that which Amalek did to Israel, and how he laid wait for him in the way when he came up from Egypt. Now go and smite Amalek, and utterly destroy all that they have, and spare them not, but slay both man and woman, infant and suckling, ox and sheep, camel and ass. Skipping down to verse 13. And Samuel came to Saul, and Saul said unto him, Blessed be thou of the Lord, I performed the commandment of the Lord. And Samuel said, What meaneth this, the bleating of the sheep in mine ears, and the lowing of the oxen which I hear? And Saul said, They have brought them from the Amalekites, for the people spared the best of the sheep and the oxen to sacrifice unto God, unto the Lord thy God, and the rest we have utterly destroyed. So God told Saul through Samuel to destroy the Amalekites. He did mostly, but he didn't quite complete the task. And that was the beginning of Saul's downfall. Verse 22 of 1 Samuel 15. And Samuel said, Hath the Lord his great delight in burnt offerings and sacrifice, as in obeying the voice of the Lord? Behold, to obey is better than sacrifice, and to hearken than the fat of rams. In verse 28, and Saul said unto him, The Lord hath rent the kingdom of Israel from thee this day, and hath given it to a neighbor of thine that is better than thou. So Saul's doom was foretold because of the Amalekites. And we skip ahead a few chapters to why David was particularly unhappy with the Amalekites. I'm going to kind of go through this a little bit quickly because we went through it recently, but David's city was down in Ziklag, and Jezreel is where the Israelites were camped, and that's where the Philistines were going up against them. And David went up with the Philistines to Jezreel because they were intending to battle there. But when they got there, the Philistines really didn't want David. And somewhere in there, the Amalekites down there. And you can also see the Edomites. So the Amalekites are a tribe of the Edomites. And there's the Moabites and the Ammonites, just following through where the people were. Anyway, the Amalekites, there we go. The Amalekites went up against David's city, Ziklag, and they sacked the city. And the Philistines sent David back. Now, between Ziklag to Jezreel is about 90 miles. That's like from here to Kings Canyon. And they covered that in 3 days. So they were moving pretty quickly and would have been pretty tired when they got back to Ziklag. They found that the Amalekites had ransacked Ziklag. David's wives and children had been taken hostage, and they took all the stuff. So in 1 Samuel 30, you can read that David got his family and his stuff back, and perhaps he is a little bit miffed with the Amalekites this time. Miffed is a word I don't see used very often, but it's kind of a fun one to use. And then we read about the young Amalekite who has a very short story, which kind of goes along the line of, hey, guess what? I just killed Saul. And David replies, really? You killed the anointed king, the king anointed by God? And this guy said, yep, I sure did. Here's his crown. And David says, well, kill him. So that's the short story, just reading through some scriptures. 2 Kings 1, verse 1. Now it came to pass after the death of Saul, when David was returned from the slaughter of the Amalekites, and David had abode 2 days in Ziklag. So David was back to Ziklag, verse 7 of 2 Samuel 1. And when he looked behind him and saw me, and he called unto me, that is, Saul called unto the Amalekite, and I answered, here I am. And he said unto me, who art thou? And I answered, I am an Amalekite. So there's an Amalekite who is within the troops that Saul had against the Philistines. So why were they there? Good question for Saul. And Saul said unto me, stand, I pray thee, upon me and slay me, for anguish has come upon me, because my life is yet whole in me. Verse 10. So I stood upon him and slew him, because I was sure that he could not live after that he was fallen. And I took the crown that was upon his head and the bracelet that was on his arm, and I brought them hither unto my Lord. Skipping down to verse 15. And David called up one of the young men and said, go near and fall upon him. And he smote him that he died. And David said unto him, thy blood be upon thy head, for thy mouth has testified against thee, saying, I have slain the Lord's anointed. So not only had this young guy slain the Lord's anointed, but he was an Amalekite. And David was miffed with the Amalekites for pretty good reason. Now, if we go over to 1 Chronicles 4, we kind of hear the epitaph of the Amalekites. And these written by name came in the days of Hezekiah, king of Judah, and smote their tents and the habitations that were found there, and destroyed them utterly unto this day, and dwelt in their rooms, because there was pasture there for their flocks. And some of them, even the sons of Simeon, 500 men, went to Mount Seir, having for their captains Pelita and Nera and those other people. And they smote the rest of the Amalekites that were escaped, and dwelt there unto this day. So Hezekiah came along about 350 years after King David, and that's when the Amalekites were finally taken care of, completely and fully. So what can we learn from the Amalekites? The Amalekites went after Israel the first chance they had, and God didn't forget that. So we need to be working with God. Some people, like Saul, later became Paul, they do learn. Hopefully we learn. Hopefully we learn the lessons. Acts 9, verse 4. And he, Saul, fell to the earth and heard a voice saying, Saul, Saul, why persecutest thou me? And he said, Who art thou, Lord? And the Lord said, I am Jesus, who thou persecutest. And it is hard for thee to kick against the pricks. And he, trembling and astonished, said, Lord, what wilt thou have me to do? And the Lord said unto him, Arise, go into the city, and it shall be told to thee what thou shalt do. We need to ask that question, Lord, what would you have me to do? Some people don't get it. Going to Acts 26, verse 27. King Agrippa, this is Paul, now his name is Paul, believest thou the prophets? I know that thou believest. Then Agrippa said to Paul, Almost thou persuadest me to be a Christian. And Paul said, I would to God that not only thou, but also all that hear me this day were both almost and altogether such as I am, except these bonds. And when he had thus spoken, the king rose up, and the governor and Bernice, and they sat with him. And when they were gone aside, they talked between themselves, saying, This man doeth nothing worthy of death. Then said Agrippa unto Festus, This man might have been set at liberty if he had not appealed unto Caesar. So really looking at King Agrippa, almost convinced. Almost isn't good enough. We have to be completely convinced to follow the Lord. We don't want to fraternize with the enemy. Saul was supposed to destroy the Amalekites, but it seems like he had someone when he went to battle against the Philistines. James 4, verse 7, submit yourselves therefore to God. Resist the devil and he will flee from you. Resist the devil. Submit ourselves to God. God thinks in terms of generations upon generations. 2 Peter 3, verse 8. But beloved, be not ignorant of this one thing, that one day is with the Lord as 1,000 years, and 1,000 years as one day. We think in terms of our lifespan. So let's not be discouraged about how long it takes for something to happen. We need to have patience. The Lord's plan is going to come to pass. We just need to persevere. 1 Thessalonians 4, verse 16. For the Lord himself shall descend from heaven with a shout, and with the voice of an archangel, and with the trump of God, and the dead in Christ shall rise first. Then we which are alive and remain shall be caught up together with them in the clouds to meet the Lord in the air. So shall we ever be with the Lord. So shall we ever be with the Lord. That's what we're looking for. Might happen in our lifespan. The way things are going, it could very well happen very soon. But it might not. It might be a while. So we just have to persevere with the Lord, deal with what he sends, or what life sends our way, and know that the Lord has a way to get through it. And don't be an Amalekite. So with that,